The city never slept, but for Aeon, the nights were louder than the days. The hum of passing cars, the faint glow of streetlights, and the distant echo of laughter all blended into a strange reminder of how quiet his own apartment felt. He wasn't alone by circumstance, he had friends, a job, a family that cared, but somehow, a wall stood between his heart and his words. For months, he carried an unspoken truth, something that sat like a stone on his chest, something he couldn't confess even to himself. His days were filled with small smiles and practiced answers. "I'm good, just busy, everything's fine," but deep down, he knew he wasn't fine. He missed who he used to be, the version of himself that believed vulnerability wasn't weakness, that honesty could heal. It began with silence. Aeon had lost his best friend, Zara, not through death, but through distance created by unspoken words. Their friendship had been effortless once. They talked about everything, dreams, fears, the color of sunsets, and the sound of rain. But one day, she said she was leaving, for a job abroad. He wanted to tell her to stay. He wanted to say that her presence had become a rhythm in his life, that losing her felt like losing a piece of himself. But he stayed silent, convinced that saying it would sound selfish. So, he smiled, wished her luck, and let her go. And just like that, the words that should have been spoken turned into the ghosts that now followed him through every night. Months passed. He scrolled through her pictures sometimes, her smile, the places she'd seen, the people she met. She seemed happy. He convinced himself that his silence had been the right choice. But deep down, he wondered, what if honesty would have changed everything? What if speaking from the heart wasn't about control, but courage? The question grew heavier with each day, and he found himself avoiding it, until one winter morning, when an unexpected message appeared on his screen. "Hey, Aeon, I'm coming home next week. Can we meet?" The message was short, simple, but it set his heart racing. He typed, deleted, and retyped a dozen responses before settling on, "Of course. Let's catch up." But the truth, he didn't know if he was ready. Meeting Zara meant confronting every word he'd buried. The cafe felt smaller than he remembered. He arrived early, restless, his mind spinning through what he might say. Then she walked in, Zara, wrapped in a gray scarf, her eyes bright but gentler somehow, like time had softened her edges. They talked about everything, the weather, work, memories, but not the silence. It hung between them, heavy but unacknowledged. Then, just as the conversation was fading into comfortable pauses, she said quietly, "You stopped writing after I left. I used to wait for your messages, your poems. Then one day, it all just stopped." "Why?" Her words cut through him. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He looked at her, unsure how to explain that silence was sometimes easier than truth. "Because," he began, his voice breaking, "I didn't know how to say what I really felt. I thought if I said too much, I'd lose you anyway. So I said nothing." Zara smiled faintly, a mixture of understanding and regret. "You didn't lose me because you spoke too much, Aeon. You lost me because you stopped speaking." Her sentence echoed in his mind long after she left that day. He walked back home through the chill of the evening, his thoughts unraveling. Maybe she was right. Maybe silence wasn't strength, it was surrender. He sat by his window, opened his old notebook, and began to write, not poems, not apologies, just truth. He wrote about the fear of being misunderstood, about the pain of holding words too long, about the strange way love hides behind pride. The more he wrote, the lighter he felt. Days turned into weeks, and Aeon kept writing. He never knew if Zara would read what he'd written, but that wasn't the point anymore. His words were no longer about someone else, they were about himself. Every page he filled became a mirror, reflecting back the courage he thought he'd lost. Slowly, his silence transformed into language, his pain into poetry. People began reading his work online, resonating with the honesty that had once terrified him. "Your words feel real," one comment read, "like they come from a place we've all been but never talk about." Aeon smiled when he saw that. Maybe that was what unspoken truths were meant for, not to be buried, but to connect hearts through shared pain and healing. Months later, Zara came to one of his open mic nights. She sat quietly at the back, listening as he read his piece titled From Heart to Words. When he finished, their eyes met for a brief moment, and she mouthed a simple word, "Finally." He didn't need to say anything in return. In that silent exchange, everything unspoken was understood. Because sometimes, healing begins not with answers, but with the courage to finally speak.